Do you know someone who might be going through a difficult time? Perhaps they are transitioning between jobs, or maybe they just lost a pet and can use some reassurance that everything will be okay. With over 20 themed gift experiences, Future You Project is here to help you support someone you care about in a meaningful and lasting way. Each Future You gift includes a personalized letter written from the perspective of the recipient's future self. It is the magic that takes a beautiful gift and turns it into an extraordinary treasure. Where flowers or any other gift may fade over time, the words delivered with each Future You Project gift experience lasts forever. Go to futureyouproject.com to support someone you love or even yourself today. And don't forget to use the promo code ThriveLoud to save 15% off site-wide.
Get it straight, Buster. I'm not here to say please. I'm here to tell you what to do. And if self-preservation is an instinct you possess, you better do it, and do it quick. I'm here to help. If my help's not appreciated, then lots of luck, gentlemen. If I'm curt with you, it's because time is a factor. I think fast, I talk fast. I need you guys to act fast if you want to get out of this. So, pretty please, with sugar on top. Listen to Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond.
Want to learn from those that are taking their lives, their businesses, and their passions to the next level? Best-selling author of Master the Art of Connecting and professional speaker Lou Diamond is here to connect you to some of the most inspiring and amazing people on the planet. Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another spectacular episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. Today on Thrive Loud, we have the host of the King's Council podcast and the founder of the King's Council Coaching. He empowers individuals and families to create a proven framework of success built within the 5 power pillars of life and deeper relationship with a higher power. Thrive Loud listeners, coming to us from Minneapolis, Minnesota, Rylee Meek. Rylee, how are you today?
Good, Lou. How you doing, man?
I'm bringing the energy, I'm bringing the vibe, and I'm excited to have somebody who likes to bring things to another level.
Yes, sir.
What I would love to do, Rylee, is bring our listeners up to speed here. Kind of like, I don't want to go all the way back to the womb, but if we have to, we will. I want to go back and understand kind of how this thing you're doing right now became your gig.
Yeah, would love to talk about that, man. So I grew up in South Dakota, which for those that don't know, that is a state.
You're the one. You're the one.
I am the one. I always ask people if they have any roots back there because there's a good chance we might be related. But I now live up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. When I was at the age of 15, I took my first job solely because I thought that I wanted to make some money, and the only way to do that was to get a job, right? And minimum wage at that time was $5.15 an hour. I'm going way back to the olden days, man. We're talking like 2001 or so. And I took that job. I worked 8 hours. I did the math in my head and I thought, man, there is no way that I'm doing that again. And what really got me going about that wasn't necessarily that somebody put that value on my time, but what really got me kind of annoyed was that I allowed that to happen. And I thought, man, I'm even at the age of 15, I just thought, not in an arrogant way, but just thought my time was more valuable than that. And that's really what started kind of my entrepreneurial journey. And, by the time, not being from South Dakota, though, not having a whole lot of mentorship or just direction on where to go, I found myself like intentionally having to seek out different mentors and coaches throughout, really the next decade of my life. And that's ultimately how I wound up here in Minnesota, Minneapolis, where I'm at now. And man, through that, just a number of business opportunities. I ultimately still went to college for 2 years. I got the old 2-year degree in exercise science, which is basically physical education class. But through that, I started to make a decent amount of money. And it was ultimately, I think that the biggest thing for me was, from a mentorship standpoint, was I looked for people that had the fruit in their life that I wanted, and I just went and got around them. And sometimes I had to pay for that. Sometimes I had to, to get a seat at the table, pay for it. And if I didn't have a seat at the table, I had to serve water at the table, and just get around those type of people that I could glean from, and ultimately just help me level up, whether it be in my finances or business or even just relationships. That was a key component for me. And, through that process, ultimately I was introduced to, I realized I was decent at sales. And through multiple sales jobs, I was introduced to this new kind of concept of selling one to many, one to a group of people.
I want to jump in here. What were some of the entrepreneurial things that you were doing along the way as you were getting to the one to many philosophy?
Yeah, man. So my very first thing that I ever did from that job was I dove into network marketing, and my family was big, highly involved in the company Herbalife, which is still around a $1 billion operation today. But I drank the Kool-Aid hard when it came to that. But the biggest thing was just getting around those like-mindseted people. And I say mindseted just for a reason, because it was people that were growth-minded, not fixed, or just like, this is just the way that I am or how I think. It challenged me to really think and start to audit my thoughts of, why do I think the way that I think? And that just led to the next thing. Because one of the things that I never really bought into, man, with that whole sales model, which I love it. If you're in network marketing, I think it's brilliant for somebody that has, very little to invest to get started in an opportunity. But I never really bought into the idea that, you earn what you're worth, or, if you want to earn, I'd rather have 1% of 100 people's efforts than 100% of my own, that whole process. Yep. And because I was selling like $50 nutritional supplements, vitamins. And so I started to sell higher ticket items and started to make more money, higher commissions, and everything from, physical fitness training to siding and windows to roofing to business valuations, solar, walk-in bathtub. You name it, man. I've pretty much have sold it, and full well knowing that, again, back to that concept that you can earn what you're worth. I always thought, like, when I would take that next sales job, it was like, hey man, you can make as much as you want. Your earning is uncapped here. And I didn't believe that, because I knew that there was only a certain amount of time in a day. Yeah. Right. Like, I could only sell so many different things before I was just completely exhausted. And that ultimately then is what really drew me to that one to many selling concept.
I'm going to bridge the gap to the one to many in a sec, but this is an interesting analysis that you made. You recognized very early on, you didn't want to get paid for a minimum amount of what your worth was for an hour. Right. And you learned throughout the entrepreneurial sales process, obviously the more expensive the things you sold, the more dollars you can get to yourself, but you were still limited to what you can do. Now let's connect the dots here. Tell us about this moving from one to many and how that's changed your philosophy, your business, your life.
Yeah. Well, to kind of tee this up, even I fell into this kind of idea or this concept off of a failed business venture in Mexico. So I was 24 years of age at the time, and I'd pretty much invested. I'd made multiple six figures, had done decently, well for a young kid at the time. But this new business venture that I had ventured on into Mexico, I pretty much poured everything I had financially into it. I leased my condo out here in Minnesota and moved down there for 5 months. And 5 months into it, they pretty much kicked us out of the country. And without going into too many details, but as I found myself on a flight back to the States, I had the realization that, man, like, not only was I freaking broke, but I was like homeless as well. So I found myself living on my sister's couch and my wife as well at the time. And it was like, what the heck am I going to do? And so I was just looking for the next opportunity. And I think as entrepreneurs, man, that's what makes us entrepreneurs, is that head on a swivel, look for opportunities. And so many people will tell you to follow your passion. You'll never work a day in your life. I think that's a bunch of BS. I believe that we follow opportunities, and we always bring our passion with us. And if we can approach just that opportunities in that way, we're always going to bring a best version of ourselves into that opportunity. And I came across this ad, man, of all places. It was on Craigslist, and it said, work 3 days a week and make $10,000. And I naturally thought, yeah, right. But because of it, I had to inquire. And that's when I was introduced to this concept of, selling in a seminar format to groups of people. And it didn't really dawn on me until I actually stepped into that first presentation. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can do one rockstar presentation and only meet with those then that care enough to know what the price is or are actually interested in the service that I have. I thought, man, if I can do that in one night a week, I'll book me up, man. I'll do this 5 nights a week. And it was like almost the offline version of a funnel. Like I invited people out that were interested. They came in, they heard me. If they were further interested, then I was only meeting with those that I could actually meet one-on-one and ultimately close the deal.
Ryan, what were some of the things that you were pitching at that point? I'm very curious, Rylee.
Yeah, man, this is the funniest part, because here's the thing too. I've never sold something that I've been just like so passionate about. And that's the thing too. I really think that, people say, well, you got to be sold on it yourself. I believe that. I mean, morally and ethically, you need to be selling something that is a good product and a good service. But I didn't give a rip about any of the stuff that I was selling. The very first thing, for example, was we were selling insulation to homeowners. Dude, I still to this day don't even know what the R means in R value. Please don't tell me, because then I can't tell this story anymore. Yeah. But believe me, I don't even hang the pictures in my own home. I'm like the least mechanical inclined person on the face of the earth. But I did know that people don't buy what they need, they buy what they want. And so if I could create a want, and as much as people would need insulation in their home, right? The idea was that we were creating a scenario in which they could lower their monthly utility bills, have a warmer home in the winter, a cooler home in the summer. And so it was selling the benefits of the benefits, right? We hear that a lot in the sales world, but even to the further extent of that, like I want to go into the benefits of the benefits of the benefits. And we oftentimes hear people talk about people don't buy a drill because they want a drill. It's like they want a hole. Well, what the heck does a hole even do for us, right? The hole is there to, hang a nail, to ultimately hang a picture. But what does that even do for us? It's the feeling that people get when they walk in the home and see this beautiful portrait that's on the wall. And so it was taking people on that emotional journey, again, from insulation to walk-in tubs, solar. Financial advisors have been doing this for decades. It's not that I invented this model by any means, but I do believe I have perfected it over the last decade. And that's where, I still have multiple companies selling through this model, but I've moved more into consulting and teaching people how to have that flow of leads and sales into their own companies.
So the can you share what the philosophy is? It has a branded name around it. And obviously it can be applied to many different industries or products or services, but there's a way that you have about selling. Share that with the listeners if you could.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So our company name is called the Social Dynamic Selling System. And the reason for that is most people think, well, social must be social media or something. And no, that's not the case at all. The social dynamic is that in any scenario, there's a dynamic that's taking place, even with us right now on a Zoom, right? Or even if you go, let's say you go out to a bar or a restaurant later, there's a social dynamic taking place between you and the hostess, you and the server, the other patrons, the bartender, the wait staff. There's a dynamic that's taking place. And so what we've done is we create a scenario in which we use that to our advantage to take people on that emotional journey, to get them to know us, like us, and trust us, right? Because people want to do, first off, nobody wants to be sold anything, right? But everybody wants to buy, right? So we have to create a scenario and an environment where they know us, they like us, they trust us. We take them through that emotional journey to ultimately get them to make the wise decision to make that purchase, or even just to make that next step to meet with you one-on-one to determine what that proposal or that price is actually going to be. So the social dynamic is the key component to this thing, selling in a group of one to many versus one-on-one.
Rylee, I'd love to understand, does it matter what the item that someone's selling is? Does it have to be tangible? Does it have to be a service-based thing? That's actually one of the questions. To those that can use what you're doing, is there a limitation to the social selling, that social dynamic selling that you put into place?
Yeah, great question. Because this really isn't the system, and why I call it a system is it's that, okay? It doesn't do us any good, even as as from a consulting standpoint to get you to do one event. It's a system. And in order to have a system in place, there has to be an ROI that somebody gets on this thing. And so, because to host events, it's not cheap, right? It takes money to invest into. We do a ton of direct mail. We're buying a steak dinner, chicken dinner, whatever it is for these people. And so the product virtually is irrelevant. However, I will say it needs to be something that can emotionally get people engaged versus like an at-need purchase. Right? Okay. Like for example, a roof, people usually are buying a roof only when they need the darn thing, but solar, they can emotionally get attached to that and then want to make that purchase sooner than later. And obviously so a high ticket item, if you're selling a $48 real estate course with no additional lifetime value, probably not the system for you, right? I got some amazing buddies that would build out an online funnel for you for something like that. But a live in-person event, probably isn't going to be the best version for you.
Rylee, the math in your system, look, not everyone's going to buy, not everyone's going to do it. What's the average success rate, or at least hit rate, of what are you aiming for, or what you have managed to achieve through some of these selling systems?
Yeah. Great question. Because most people don't even think to ask that. And before we ever even onboard somebody or start to go through this process, we do a strategy call. And that's really what I want to determine is, does this make sense long-term for us? And my usual goal of that is, I fully expect out of a series of events that we do, there should be a full 300% ROI. And why that number is kind of my sweet spot. What I found is that if I'm spending $5,000, I want to be able to make 15 out of that thing. Like, can I actually make that as far as a return on my investment? And if it's lower, maybe I'm not spending enough marketing dollars, or if it's higher, maybe there's another issue that it comes into play. So that 300% mark usually is that sweet spot that keeps this sustainable. Like our tagline with the company here is that we create a predictable, a sustainable, and a scalable selling system. So why it works really well from a scaling standpoint is, for example, if your business is in Charlotte, North Carolina right now, but you're looking to grow into Atlanta, Georgia, I can have a room full of readily available, hungry prospects before you ever set up any sort of footprint or anything along those lines in that area. So you can march into an area, go into an area with generating income before you ever spend a dime as far as building out that footprint there.
Okay. Now comes the fun stuff here. I'm very curious about this. As somebody who loves this, right? In pulling these things together, you've seen some really cool things work well, and you've managed to figure out how to make this grow thereafter. The last 2 years have been pretty challenging. A certain global pandemic has certainly made it difficult to have those in-person dinners or events. How did you navigate through this crazy horizon, where obviously the ability to be socially dynamic was really challenging?
Yeah. It has been an interesting couple of years for us. And as I mentioned before, I think, as an entrepreneur, we need to be head on a swivel, constantly looking for opportunities. So when I got the dreadful news that Monday in March of 2020 I was actually in Scottsdale, Arizona. My wife and I were supposed to be taking the week off and chilling at a nice little resort down there. And I got the rumors of it over the weekend, and I'm like, there's no chance that they're going to be closing down restaurants. And I got the news, dude, that week alone, we had over 300 events that we had to cancel across the country because we're doing live seminars in restaurants. I'd already paid for marketing. People were planning on showing up that night and throughout the rest of the week. So I had mid six figures, over 300 grand invested out into these events that I was like, what am I going to do here? How do I have an ROI? The nice thing about a system is that there's a system. It's like, if I know every third quarter I'm putting into the slot machine, I'm going to get $1 out. I'm never going to not put in more quarters, right? Who'd have thought that a freaking pandemic would take place. So partly when that happened, immediately I'm like, why the hell didn't you think of this, Rylee? How could this, like, where was my SWOT analysis on this thing? Like identifying the threat. And, but ultimately, after I spent that 5 minutes, I was like, all right, what are my opportunities here? How can we grow this thing? And of course, some of it is reactive mode. Unfortunately, there's some things that we just didn't have planned. And so I had to immediately build out webinars and get our team ready to do virtual sales presentations. Because one-to-many is, I mean, been doing that for a long time virtually. So that was nothing new. But it was how could I still serve? I still had something. What could I do with what I had? And it was devastating. We made sales. We learned through the process, learned a lot. But the day that, we were only down for 6 weeks as far as like no in-person seminars. By mid-July, we had events going in different spots throughout the country, obviously limited seating, different things like that. But we slowly were ramping back up during that time. And the cool thing is while our show rates, our response rates were lower, those that showed up, our close rate was much, much higher.
So as listeners were able to dissect here, Rylee, that not only is it just about you selling all this stuff, you've got teams of people now doing this. Can you share with the listeners, give us a scale of what this operation of yours now actually looks like from what you managed to build it to, and how long did it take you to do it?
Yeah. So, well, heck, man, my first 6 months, I went from zero. I had $673 in my bank account. I left that part out of, this would have been July of 2011. And I was like, what the heck? What am I doing, God? This is when I was sleeping on my sister's couch. And thankfully I had a credit card. I could throw some marketing dollars on that. And the thing that I did though, is I continued to reinvest. So I made a few sales, I reinvested, and I learned. I was constantly, consciously aware of how I could get better. And from a closing standpoint and implementing that into our sales presentations and fast forward then 6 months from July of 2011 to the end of that year, I'd done 2.1 million in sales. So amazing. 673 to that. And I was like, cool. Then I'm starting to get a little cocky, thinking that I'm all that, right? But through that, then it was like, all right, now I can start to grow and hire and train people. So by the end of 2012, I had 26 sales crews across 38 states. We'd done 12 million in revenue that year, again, another 12 million. And that's when it's like, I realized the product was irrelevant. Okay. Right. It was the system that was the product really. And what else could I sell? So it was just higher ticket items. So through that time frame, I've started 8 different companies. Every single one of them, we've hit 7. A couple of them, we hit 8 figures within the very first year, within the first 10 months of every single one of those. We hit that 7 and 8 figure mark. We've done 9 figures, in total of my own companies. But now we also then consult and we teach people this system, because remember I said, I didn't care about any of the products or services that we were selling. That was like a big thing for me, because as much as, money is great, it allows us to do great things. There was always still that feeling of unfulfilled. And I really care about these. And I realized that I love people. I love working with people, helping them grow and develop their mission, their vision, their purpose. So I started to teach people how to implement this within their own marketing systems. Because you can have the greatest product in the world, the greatest service in the world, but if nobody knows about it, you ain't helping anybody, including yourself or your family. So it's, if you build it, they do not come. Like, I don't care what the heck that movie says, you'd have to have that continual flow of leads and sales into your organization. And that's ultimately what this system has done. So we now teach people how to implement this system into their own companies and marketing plans.
Love it. I want to ask this question before I'll keep it towards the back end here. Obviously, you found some other hobbies along the way here too, sure. Which is obviously, talk to me a little bit about King's Council podcast and what that means to you and the message you've been delivering.
Yeah, absolutely. So also kind of partly through the pandemic, that was just an interesting time, I think, for anybody. But I just know, I remember when everything was going down, I just remember my daughter was 8 at the time. And I was like, this world is a freaking train wreck. I just remember looking down at her and being like, I can't leave this world to her the way it is. I got to do something. And then immediately I had the thought of like, but who am I? What can I do? And immediately I felt God just say, if not you, then who? And that was just the initial seed of the vision here of what King's Counsel actually is, which is it's a coaching program. It's a training and mentorship company for entrepreneurs. And it really evolved into a lot of things over the last year and a half or so. But that was really the real reason behind it was, yes, I had that experience with my daughter of when the pandemic went down, but I was sitting on the couch with my wife one night, and we live in a beautiful home, 12,000 square foot. We're 150 foot of lakeshore. Like from the outside looking in, you would say, must be nice, right? And people that always say that, I'm like, yeah, it is, right? Because it took a lot of freaking work to do it. But still, money ain't everything, right? And it is if you don't have enough of it, right? It becomes our everything. But once you have it, first off, it's a great magnifier. It makes us more of who we already are. So if you're a punk, you're just a bigger punk when you have money, right? If you're generous when you have little, you'll be generous when you have a lot. And I realized when I started to make a lot of money, man, I realized I was a punk, and it exposed a lot of things in my life. And thankfully, I feel God just never took his finger off of me and allowed me to grow through that and grow through those time periods. So still then feeling that moment on the couch that I had mentioned with my wife, it was like, God, is this it? Am I just supposed to be making more money? Do I need to start another company? And the feeling of unfulfillment was just so heavy deep within my stomach of like, that's not what I want to do. Yes, I want to help people. I want to coach people and train people. And we were helping them make a lot of money, but I realized it was helping them make a lot of money, making a lot of the stupid decisions that I had previously made as well. And I didn't want that. Train wrecks of marriages. I went through a divorce when I started to make a lot of money. And my vow was to continue to let that happen. And so part of King's Counsel is, we teach people, we coach people how to make money, no doubt about it. But it's a lot of it is how to steward it appropriately, and how to make the world a better place through that process. Because I really believe we are called to create wealth, but we are called to steward it appropriately as well. And that's my passion project, man. That's what we're building here within the King's Counsel.
I like it. Rylee, I want to ask you this question, which I ask most of the guests on this program. I'm curious to see where this goes. For the last 10 years, since $600 in your pocket to multiple $1 million businesses, to a sense of purpose for what you're doing, you are thriving on most days. Yet, as you know better than anybody, we all have those days when we're not quite kicking on all cylinders and we're a little off our game. Rylee Meek, when you have trouble thriving, what practice do you seek, or maybe which individual do you seek out to get yourself back on the thriving track?
Yeah, man, great question. So I'm a Christian. I'm a born again believer in Jesus Christ. So I pretty much live by, and this hasn't been lately, or this hasn't been all my life, right? But the last couple of years, it is Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. And if I can do that every single morning, even when I don't feel like it, have those disciplines in place to seek first the kingdom of God. Like, what does that mean? The kingdom of God and like the kingdom of heaven here on earth, but also his righteousness, which really means to be in alignment, right alignment with him. And that ultimately, the whole section leading up to that in the Bible, Matthew was talking about basically, don't worry about what we eat, don't worry about what we drink, because all of that will be taken care of if we seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness.
Awesome stuff, man. Rylee, let's do the admin part of the show, and then we're going to go down Fun Street, because I have a feeling you're a pretty fun guy. He's got a smile ear to ear, folks. And by the way, a killer tan too, which you'll see in the podcast artwork. I want his look and feel here. All right. I just have pale skin. That's all I know. Share with the listeners all the places people can learn about you, your platforms, your programs, so they can connect to it. We're going to put it in the show notes, but it always gets more engagement when they hear it from you.
Yeah. Well, considering they're listening to a podcast, I assume they're podcast listeners. So the King's Counsel podcast, I've been doing that for about a year and a half now, multiple episodes on there, teachings on there, solo episodes, and we have guests on as well. So find that there. On Instagram is probably where we're most active. It's the Rylee Meek, and Rylee spelled a little differently. So you'll look for that in the show notes if you can.
That's RYLEE. If they're reading it on there, hopefully while they're driving, they're not going to start texting this along the way. Right. But if they're listening to on their phone, they could look down and go get it. Awesome. All right, Rylee Meek, you ready to hit Fun Street with me?
Let's go, man. Let's go. I'm excited for this.
Okay, first of all, if you could share with the listeners maybe what is one or a certain movie that is one of your favorites or one that resonates with you more often than not?
Oh man. This sounds terrible, but I love The Wolf of Wall Street.
I wasn't expecting that coming from you,
right?
Okay.
I know.
What is it about that? I guess talk about a guy who knows how to sell.
Serious.
Is that what connects with you about that movie?
Well, I think, yeah, one of my favorite sayings in that whole movie was, and I don't even know if this is actually a real saying. I would have to ask Mr. Belfort that, but when Leo goes, "There is no nobility in poverty," I was just like, yeah. And I remember a few years ago, actually, I was in kind of a sales slump. And I remember Ash going, my wife her name is Ashley. She goes, "You need to just go watch The Wolf of Wall Street and get you fired up again." And so now there was a time in my life when I maybe did some of that stupid crap, but now I still like the movie. Doesn't mean I have to agree with everything that they do or the decisions they make in there.
I think without getting too off the reservation, the line in the movie is, "If I have to choose between poor and rich, I will choose rich every effing time." I think
every effing time. Yes. As
said.
He's like hitting his head with the microphone.
Into everything he's got to do. We're going to do the speed round, Rylee. I know you're going to have fun with this. I'm going to ask you something. I want the first thing that comes to your mind. These are things that lift you up, that motivate you, that make you feel good, that basically make you thrive. And all these answers are your answers, so there are no wrong ones. So you're going to do fine. Everything.
So it's quick. I got to be
as quick as you can. You don't have to feel like we're on the Family Feud here, and you're gonna, Steve Harvey's going to kick you out of the room or something.
All right.
Not that. All right. Okay. Of late, recently, a song that you've been listening to, or maybe one that pumps you up.
Man. I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's called King Jesus. How about that?
Okay.
It's fun one.
Favorite food that's not a dessert?
I hate dessert anyways. How about sushi?
Okay. If you were to have dessert, what would be the favorite dessert?
Oh man. How about a beer? Does that
best
count?
Answer ever. That is the best answer ever for the dessert question, right? Rylee Meek has locked it up. An activity you wish you did more of?
Read. Like physically read a book.
An activity you wish you did less of? This is tough. Why can't I think of one, man? How about drink beer? How about that? If I could snap my fingers and Rylee Meek can be anywhere in the world, where are you?
I'm right where my feet are, man. I'm living it.
He's a man in the present. I love it.
Yes.
Rylee Meek. Everybody check out the King's Council podcast, his social dynamic selling system. We'll put all the links in the show notes. Rylee, man, killing it. Thanks so much for coming on Thrive Loud. A pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Lou. Appreciate it, man.
And to all the listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep moving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Check us out on the web at thriveloud.com and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud. And check us out on the Good Pods app at Thrive Loud, where you can follow, listen, and connect directly to Lou and all of the Thrive Loud episodes. Thanks for listening.